Hello, my name is Dishala. I'm an archaeologist and I write for print. In the last 1 month, much of media coverage around the archaeological research in Gujarat has focused on dates. Various reports have announced the unearthing of about 5,300 to 5,000-year-old settlement in Kutch by the University of Kerala. The emphasis, however, has been on the numbers rather than on its archaeological depth. In the flurry of numbers, we have ignored the actual significance of the excavation, the decades of scholarship, and the fieldwork they are built upon. The truth is that the chronology of Gujarat's ancient past is not a recent revelation. It is a well established fact in academia that prior to the rise of Harappan port towns and cities, indigenous societies have adapted to the environment and established their own cultural milieu. Gujarat's archaeological records show that its history is long and non-linear. In this land, which occupies in the northeast corner of the western India, hunter-gatherers coexisted with the early agropastoralists and early copper users long before the rise and fall of the Harappan culture. Against this background, the recent excavations at Lakhapar are significant not merely for its age or dates, but because of the evidence that's been unearthed during the excavation. These are not mere discoveries that revise the timeline, but the ones that deepen our understanding. This is what deserves our excavation. And in this week's column, I'll be pointing out to this very unknown aspect of Gujarat's ancient history and archaeology, but also throw light on the significance of Lakpar's excavation. Gujarat is a region where Saurashtra or Kathiawar Peninsula resembles, according to S.J. Sankalia, as a caricatured head bending down to the coastal plain with a slender body supported by Malwa Plateau and Satpura Range. This geographically diverse terrain has fostered a rich and a complex archaeological landscape that shaped long, complex trajectory of human occupation. Since the prehistoric times, early humans have occupied this region. There are evidence of Paleolithic or Old Stone Age at the site, along the ancient rivers like Mahi and Sabarmati. As the region then transitioned into the new Stone Age, there was also a very prolonged period of which is known as the Mesolithic, the transition period, where microliths, small stone tools, starts to appear. Sites like Langnaj in northern Gujarat throw a rare glimpse of this very phenomenon of Mesolithic foragers and then transitions into the new Stone Age or the age of agropastoralists in Gujarat. Uh, at Langnaj, which I've already written on this, you can go and check out that column. The geometric microliths tool, along with the evidence of hunting gathering, were combined with early domestication as well, and also of burial practices. Now, Langnaj was a site which, as per the timeline, should have been much earlier. If one has to follow the linear progression, must have been about 10,000 BCE. But Langnaj chronology sort of coexists with the rise of cities like early Harappan sites like Harappa in Punjab and Mohenjo-daro. So there is a long linearity one can see that in Gujarat you have cities being developed, and also in outside Gujarat they have early agro-pastoralist cultures and agrarian cultures being set up, whereas in Gujarat you have both coexisting at the same time. This, therefore, then gradually transitions into the sedentary life where sites like Prabhas, Patan in Saurashtra, Padri in Somnath, Loteshwar in northern Gujarat, about 4th to 5th millennium BCE starts to show the rise of early agropastoralism and the early onset of metal use, the use of copper. And they also have a distinctive regional ceramic traditions which really set them apart from other agrarian societies, the early agrarian societies. Sites at Loteshwar and Rangpur, you see a continuation of cultural sequence from Mesolithic to Chalcolithic period and also beyond. By 3rd millennium BCE, of course, then you see the rise of the Harappan centers like Dholavira, Lothal, Bagasura, etc., which are very important. And they are found across Rashtra, Kutch, and there is a very distinctive pottery tradition which is known as the Surat Harappan, which is very different from the other Harappan ceramic traditions, and it's found largely in Saurashtra and Kutch. So you see that the chronology of Gujarat is already established. We know that pre-Harappan there have been settlements, and post-Harappan as well there have been settlements. But what is fascinating was that we did not know whether there was any collaboration or whether there were any sort of interaction between the two. There was an understanding that the landscape was sort of shared. It was a shared landscape, but what was the depth of this interaction, and this cultural exchange was not known, and this is where the sites like Lakhapar plays an important role. The archaeological site of Lakhapur was identified in 2022 with the help of Narayan Bhai Jajani, who was a former Sarpanch of Lakhapur village. It was found by the team who excavated another site in the vicinity by Abhayan GS and Rajesh SV of the Department of Archaeology at the University of Kerala. They identified the site as the early Harappan on the basis of surface collection. And around the time when this site was identified, they were excavating another site called Juna Katya, which is located about 1.5 kilometers away from Lakhpur. The Juna Katya is a early Harappan cemetery and a unique site at that. It was excavated first in 2019, then in 2020, and then 2022. The Juna Katya site is important because it's the early Harappan cemetery. Usually what happens is that we find mature Harappan cemetery largely, and early Harappan burials are sort of are found only in few numbers. But here at site, it's largely an early Harappan cemetery, and one of the biggest early Harappan cemeteries, if not the largest, found in Kutch. And here, in three field seasons, about 197 barrels have been found. And at Lakhpur, when they identified Lakhpur in 2022 and excavated early this year, they were expecting early Harappan domestic architecture and structures and other evidence, and not the burials. So when they were excavating, they did find large stone structures. They found plethora of pottery and various other artifacts. But interestingly, they also found one human burial at the site. The archaeological site at Lakhpur village in Kutch was identified in 2022 by archaeologist Abhayan GS and Rajesh SB of Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala. The team, which was headed by them, were already excavating another site in the region, and during the exploration, they identified this site. Upon identification, they labeled the site as an early Harappan site, which was dated to about 3,300 to 2,600 BCE. Now, early Harappan, for context, is the period which precedes the urban phase of the Harappan civilization. That is the period where the foundation for the urban cities was laid. These very predominant Harappan characteristic or classical Harappan characteristics were started to take shape during this time period, about 1,000 years. Started to take shape. For instance, the seal started to appear, but the seal didn't had any Harappan letter, but just simply geometric patterns. And then that transitioned into early classical phase of Harappan civilization, or the urban phase. So when they identify this site, they identify it as early Harappan, dated to about 3,300 BCE, which is about 5,300 years old. And they identified it when they were excavating a very important site called Juna Katya, about 1.5 kilometers away from the site in very close proximity to Lakhpur. Juna Katya is a early Harappan cemetery. Now, it's very important to point out to this very nature of the site, because it's very rare to find an early Harappan cemetery. There's another cemetery which was excavated not so long ago by MSc Baroda called Dhaneti, which was again early Harappan necropolis. Junakatia yielded about 197 burials in three field season, and the reason why I stated that it's very rare to find early Harappan cemeteries because when we are excavating Harappan burial ground, we often find mature Harappan burial on top. To be able to excavate early Harappan burial, we have to at times dig further, or they're very fragile, and the context is often not clear. So sites like Junakatya and Dhaneti are very important, and they hint at the beginning of Harappan burial practices, perhaps, or the characteristics which we today call as the Harappan characteristics, perhaps started to take shape around this time period. Therefore, these sites are very, very important. At Lakhapar, when they excavated earlier this year, they found large stone structures, a human burial, a plethora of pottery and artifacts. These structures were built from local sandstone and shale, indicating an organized construction and systematic planning. According to archaeologists, the most significant discovery at the site was the presence of a pre-Prabhas pottery named after the type site Prabhas pattern in Saurashtra, and also found at sites like Datrana and Janan. This rare ceramic type is characterized by specific form and fabric, which suggests an interaction with the regional Chalcolithic communities which existed at the same time. Uh, in other words, pre-Prabhas pottery, which was first identified at Prabhas Patan, signifies the early phase of the Chalcolithic period agropastoralism in Gujarat, and there its presence at site like Lakhpur, which is largely an early Harappan site, suggests that the early Harappan occupants at Lakhpur were in close contact, or there were cultural interactions with the people, the Chalcolithic communities which were in the region. And the pre-Prabhas pottery was is very rare to find. It's a very rare ceramic to find, and finding it in an early Harappan context makes it very, very important. Furthermore, the human burial that was found at Lakhpur within the habitation area also includes the pre-Prabhas pottery assemblage. Abhiyan and Rajesh, the archaeologists, noted that a considerable difference between the early Harappan burial at Junakatya and at that of the pre-Prabhas burial found at Lakhpur. According to them, the pre-Prabhas burial lacked any architectural or surface markers and was placed directly into a burial pit. This makes it actually the first such burial, pre-Prabhas burial with Chalcolithic pottery to be found in Gujarat, and that too linked with the early Harappan site. A large portion of habitation layer closely resembles early Harappan Sindh type pottery, which also was seen at Junakadya. So, therefore, it's very important that we understand the archaeological significance of sites like Lakhpur and not just focus on the dates that they are 5,300 year old. It's very important to highlight that the burial, even one small evidence such as one burial, can help us understand the bigger picture, which is sort of unknown to us till now. In the end, as mentioned, when Dhaneti was excavated, it was a very a very important excavation. It's very important to highlight that the sites like Lakhpur and Junakathia are important because they help us shape our understanding of the regional archaeology, and it's very important to understand how regional communities interacted with each other, and how they perhaps must have played an important role in shaping the first urban cities of India, and especially in this case, Gujarat. It's very important to acknowledge their role, which is often ignored or gets buried in the flurry of numbers and dates that we are so obsessed in recent times. I hope that you found Lakpar's excavation as interesting as I did when I first read about it. The excavation, the work is still ongoing, and it's just the first season. And I hope that the excavation is undertaken again, and we find more interesting evidence from Lakpar and other sites which the team have identified, and perhaps it's in the pipeline to excavate. If you like such interesting content, please subscribe to the Print's YouTube channel and or follow Print on various social media platform. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, leave your comments. Your comments really help us make these videos better. And for more such interesting anecdotes on archaeological research and opinions on insights on archaeological research, stay tuned for more. Thank you once again for listening.